I've never met an intelligent woman that I'd want to date.
On behalf of the intelligent women around the world, may I just say,
There's a secret curse in Hollywood, a name whispered whenever a great show starts to go bad. That name is Ted McGinley, but he's not the only one. Today, we're diving deep into the stories of actors who became famous for all the wrong reasons, changing our favorite sitcoms forever. And believe it or not, one of them got the main character's wife completely removed from the show. 1. Robbie Rist on The Brady Bunch.
Would you like someone to tattle on you?
That's no fun.
Well, then why should you tattle on other people?
'Cause that is fun.
The Brady Bunch was a wholesome, feel-good show about a lovely lady, a man named Brady, and their 6 kids. For 5 seasons, the formula worked perfectly. We loved watching Greg, Marcia, Peter, Jan, Bobby, and Cindy get into innocent trouble and learn valuable life lessons. The show was simple, charming, and a massive hit. But by season 5, the kids were growing up, the actors were getting older, and the cute kid storylines were starting to fade away. The producers started to panic. What could they do to bring back that youthful energy? Their answer was Cousin Oliver, played by young Robbie Rist. He was a small, clumsy, jinx-prone kid who came to live with the Bradys. And almost immediately, fans hated him. He felt like a desperate attempt to add a new, cute kid to the mix, and his storylines were seen as annoying and unnecessary. He was a living, breathing signal that the show was out of gas. The term Cousin Oliver syndrome was born from this, used to describe any time a show adds a new young character in a desperate attempt to boost falling ratings. The addition of Oliver didn't work. The show was canceled at the end of that season. He only appeared in the final 6 episodes, but his impact was so negative that he became a legend for all the wrong reasons. Adding a new kid is one thing, but what happens when a character who was already there becomes so powerful he pushes the rest of the family into the background? 2. Jaleel White on Family Matters.
Hi, everybody.
I could have sworn I locked that door.
You did. I took the liberty of making my own key.
Here's the thing about Family Matters. It was originally supposed to be a show about the Winslow family. Carl, Harriet, Eddie, Laura, and Judy were the heart of a classic family sitcom. It was a spin-off of another popular show, Perfect Strangers, and it was meant to be a warm, funny look at a middle-class family in Chicago. Then, halfway through the first season, a new character showed up. A nerdy, clumsy, suspender-wearing neighbor named Steve Urkel, played by Jaleel White. He was only supposed to be in 1 episode, but the audience went absolutely wild. His catchphrase, "Did I do that?" became an instant phenomenon. The producers saw dollar signs, and suddenly Urkel was in every episode. Then he was the main focus of every episode. The show stopped being about the Winslows and became The Steve Urkel Show. Jaleel White was a talented physical comedian, but the character's total dominance wore out its welcome for many viewers. The storylines became more and more ridiculous, involving Urkel inventing transformation chambers to become the cool Stefano Urkel, or creating time machines. The family sitcom was gone, replaced by a wacky sci-fi comedy. For fans of the original concept, Urkel's overwhelming popularity completely ruined the show they first fell in love with. And speaking of family members, Urkel's rise to stardom had another casualty. It led to one of the most bizarre and unexplained character disappearances in TV history. 3. Jamie Foxworth on Family Matters.
Lo, what's 8 times 9? 72. Lo, what's 81?
As the Urkel phenomenon took over Family Matters, the show's creators started to focus all their energy and budget on his crazy inventions and antics. The show was no longer about a family, so it seems they decided the family had 1 kid too many. That kid was Judy Winslow, the youngest daughter, played by Jamie Foxworth. For the first 4 seasons, Judy was a regular part of the Winslow family. She didn't have as many lines as her older siblings, Eddie and Laura, but she was always there, a part of the family dynamic. Then, at the start of season 5, she walks upstairs to her room and is never seen or mentioned again for the rest of the show's 5 remaining seasons. She was just gone. Poof. Erased from existence. The other characters carried on as if she never even existed. Later on, her own mother, Harriet, would say she had 2 children. It was a cold and strange decision that has baffled fans for decades. The official reason was that her character had become unnecessary as the show focused more on Urkel. Jamie Foxworth was let go, and her character was wiped from the family history. It was a clear sign that the show's priorities had shifted completely, leaving the original Family Matters concept in the dust. Erasing a character is a bold move, but our next actor became so infamous for appearing on shows right before they ended that his name became a code word for a sitcom's final days. 4. Ted McGinley, the patron saint of jumping the shark. Some actors are known for their great roles. Ted McGinley is known for something else entirely. He has a reputation as being the patron saint of jumping the shark. The phrase jumping the shark comes from an infamous episode of Happy Days where the Fonz literally jumps over a shark on water skis. It's used to describe the moment a TV show has clearly run out of good ideas and is on a downward slide. Well, Ted McGinley has an uncanny knack for joining the cast of a popular show right around that time. He first did it on Happy Days itself, joining the cast in later seasons as Roger Phillips. The show's quality had already been declining, and his arrival seemed to cement its fate. Then he joined the cast of The Love Boat, another show that was past its prime. But his most famous example was on the massive hit, Married with Children. He was brought in to play Jefferson Darcy, the new husband of the Bundys' neighbor, Marcy. The original actor who played Marcy's husband had left, and McGinley was his replacement. While he was a decent part of the show, his arrival marked a shift. The show had been on for a long time, and bringing him in felt like a sign that the series was getting older and trying to freshen things up. The show lasted for several more seasons, but for critics and fans who watch for these things, his appearance was a clear signal that the glory days were over. Sometimes a new actor signals the end, but what if it's the main actor's departure that leaves a hole so big the show can never truly recover? 5. Shelley Long on Cheers.
I find older men stimulating.
I hope you're not talking about me.
Oh, certainly not. You're not in the least bit stimulating.
For 5 seasons, Cheers was the biggest comedy on television, and it was all built around one central relationship: the on-again, off-again romance between the bartender Sam Malone and the intellectual waitress Diane Chambers. The chemistry between Ted Danson and Shelley Long was electric. Their witty banter, their arguments, their moments of passion, it was the engine that drove the entire show. Fans were deeply invested in the Sam and Diane story. Would they end up together? The show was at the absolute peak of its popularity. And then Shelley Long decided to leave. She wanted to pursue a movie career and spend more time with her family. Her departure was a seismic shock to the television landscape. How could the show possibly continue without Diane? The writers did their best. They brought in a new character, the neurotic and career-driven Rebecca Howe, played by Kirstie Alley. The show was still funny, and it was still popular, running for 6 more seasons. But for a huge portion of the fan base, the magic was gone. The Sam and Rebecca dynamic was completely different. It was more about frustration and comedy than romantic tension. Many loyal viewers felt that the heart of the show had been ripped out when Shelley Long walked away. Leaving a show can split the fan base. But our next story involves 2 stars leaving, which basically hollowed out their sitcom and left the final season feeling like a cheap imitation. 6. Topher Grace and Ashton Kutcher on That 70s Show.
I am waiting for my jeans to come out of the dryer, and I want you to stay off my case. It'll only take me a minute.
I don't think Kelso's gonna last that long.
That 70s Show was all about a group of teenage friends hanging out in a basement in the 1970s. At the very center of that group was Eric Foreman, played by Topher Grace. The show was essentially his story. His relationship with his girlfriend Donna, his friendship with the goofy Kelso, played by Ashton Kutcher, and his interactions with his parents, Red and Kitty, were the core of the series. For 7 seasons, this formula was golden. But at the end of the 7th season, both Topher Grace and Ashton Kutcher decided to leave the show to focus on their movie careers. This was a massive blow. How can you have a show about Eric Foreman without Eric Foreman? And how can the group feel the same without the lovable idiot Kelso? The producers decided to push forward with an 8th and final season anyway. They brought in a new character named Randy, played by Josh Myers, to try and fill the void left by Eric. Fans did not like Randy at all. He felt like a forced replacement, and he had zero chemistry with the rest of the cast. The final season felt empty and sad. The heart of the show was gone. It limped to the finish line, a shadow of its former self, proving that when your main stars walk away, sometimes it's better to just turn off the lights. Losing your main character is tough, but what happens when you don't just lose them, but you replace them with a new actor who completely changes the vibe of the show? 7. Ashton Kutcher on 2.5 Men.
Why are you putting Jake's stuff all over the house?
Because I want this girl to see I'm not just another jerk trying to get her into bed. I'm a loving uncle.
Who's trying to get her into bed?
That's the loving part.
For 8 years, 2.5 Men was one of the biggest sitcoms in the world, and it was all because of Charlie Sheen's portrayal of the hard-partying, womanizing character, Charlie Harper. The show's edgy humor and Sheen's bad boy persona were a perfect match. The show was a ratings giant. Then came Charlie Sheen's very public and very messy meltdown. His erratic behavior and his public insults aimed at the show's creator, Chuck Lorre, led to him being fired from his own show. The #1 comedy on television was suddenly without its main star. Production was halted, and everyone wondered if this was the end. But the network decided the show was too valuable to let go. So they did something drastic. They brought in Ashton Kutcher to replace Charlie Sheen. Kutcher played Walden Schmidt, a sweet, naive internet billionaire who buys Charlie's house after his character meets an untimely end. The problem was, this changed the entire DNA of the show. The edgy, cynical humor was replaced with a sillier, more goofy tone. It was no longer about 2 battling brothers. It was about a clueless rich guy and the mooching brother left behind. While the show remained popular for a few more seasons, for original fans, it was a completely different and, in their opinion, much worse show. The meltdown that led to that recasting was legendary, but it wasn't the first time a star's off-screen behavior brought a show to a screeching halt. 8. Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men. Before Ashton Kutcher ever showed up, the original implosion of 2.5 Men was a spectacle unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. Charlie Sheen wasn't just the star of the show. In many ways, he was the show. His real-life reputation for wild partying blended seamlessly with his character, Charlie Harper. It made him the highest-paid actor on television, but in 2011, his real-life issues spiraled out of control in a very public way. He began giving bizarre interviews, talking about tiger blood and winning. He also publicly attacked the show's creator, Chuck Lorre, with a series of angry and offensive rants. The situation became completely unworkable. The producers had no choice. They shut down production on the highest-rated sitcom on TV. They eventually fired their megastar. The turmoil was immense. The show's entire future was in jeopardy, and hundreds of crew members were out of a job. The fallout was a media firestorm. It tainted the legacy of the show's successful early years. The name Charlie Sheen became synonymous with celebrity meltdowns. The chaos he created left a permanent stain on the show, forcing a creative reboot that many fans never accepted. A star getting fired is one thing, but what about a star who gets fired, and the network tries to continue the show by getting rid of her character, and even her name from the title? 9. Roseanne Barr on Roseanne.
If I swore as much as I wanted to, I'd never say anything else. So you see, I'm using restraint, and God loves that.
In 2018, the classic sitcom Roseanne returned to television after a 20-year absence. The revival was a gigantic, out-of-the-box success. It brought back the entire original cast and was praised for tackling modern issues with the same blunt, blue-collar honesty that made the original great. It was the #1 show on television, and its star, Roseanne Barr, was on top of the world. And then, it all came crashing down. Roseanne Barr posted a deeply offensive and racist tweet about a former government official. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. The network, ABC, was faced with an impossible decision. They had a massive hit on their hands, but their star had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Within hours, they made a stunning announcement. The show was canceled. Later, they decided to retool the series without its main character and creator. The show was renamed The Connors, and in the first episode, it was revealed that the character of Roseanne had passed away from an opioid overdose. The firing and the subsequent reboot were a massive shock. While The Connors has continued for several seasons, the controversy surrounding its creation and the absence of its original matriarch changed the show forever. Sometimes an actor's own actions end their time on a show. But what about when an actor's personal beliefs start to interfere with the stories being told? 10. Kirk Cameron on Growing Pains.
Now, Jason, don't do anything foolish.
Maggie, do I look like I'm about to do something foolish?
Growing Pains was a beloved family sitcom from the 80s, famous for launching the career of Leonardo DiCaprio and for its teen heartthrob, Kirk Cameron, who played the charming troublemaker Mike Seaver. As the show's popularity soared, Kirk Cameron underwent a significant personal change. He became a devout, born-again Christian. His newfound faith began to influence his work on the show. According to reports from the cast and crew, he started to object to storylines and jokes that he felt were too adult or inappropriate. He reportedly became a powerful voice on set, and his opinions led to scripts being changed and storylines being censored. The most famous example involves the actress Julie McCulloch, who played Mike Seaver's girlfriend, Julie. She had previously posed for Playboy magazine. Reports from the time claimed that Kirk Cameron demanded she be fired from the show because of her past, and she was let go. This caused a lot of friction on set and changed the atmosphere of the show. It went from being a lighthearted family comedy to a more tense working environment where storylines had to be approved by its stars' moral standards. Creative friction can be tough, but our next story involves a star whose behavior was so unprofessional that it derailed the entire production of her own hit show. 11. Brett Butler on Grace Under Fire.
Today she's going to be a great sculptress. Yesterday he decided that she was going to be the first female president.
Yeah, until they discovered the truth about Nixon.
Grace Under Fire was a huge hit in the 90s. It was a sitcom that broke the mold, starring comedian Brett Butler as Grace Kelly, a single mom and recovering alcoholic trying to raise her kids after leaving an abusive marriage. The show was praised for its honesty, its humor, and for tackling tough subjects. Brett Butler won a Golden Globe and was seen as a major new star. But behind the scenes, a much darker story was unfolding. Butler was struggling with her own personal demons, including a battle with substance abuse. Her behavior on set became more and more erratic and unprofessional. Production would often be delayed or canceled because she was unable to work. The atmosphere became toxic, and cast and crew members started leaving. The show's ratings began to plummet as the quality suffered due to the constant chaos. The network tried to get her help, but the situation didn't improve. It got so bad that they eventually canceled the show in the middle of a season, not even airing the final episodes that had been filmed. It was a sad end for a show that had once been so promising, all because its stars' off-screen struggles made it impossible to continue. Personal struggles can tragically end a show, but sometimes a creative decision to remove a character can cause so much outrage that it tanks a show's ratings overnight. 12. Leah Remini and Kevin James on Kevin Can Wait.
I'm not sure that's something we'd want to read.
Danielle, we all know you have a problem with commitment. Don't miss the boat on this one like you did with Tyler.
When Kevin James returned to Sitcoms with Kevin Can Wait, it was a solid success. The show was about a newly retired cop adjusting to life at home with his wife and kids. His wife, Donna, was played by actress Erin Hayes. The two had great chemistry, and the show was a dependable ratings performer for its first season. But during that first season, Leah Remini, Kevin James's former co-star from the long-running hit The King of Queens, made a guest appearance. The chemistry between James and Remini was so strong that the network executives saw an opportunity to recapture the old magic. So they made a shocking and controversial decision. When the show came back for season 2, it was revealed that the wife, Donna, had passed away suddenly. Actress Erin Hayes was fired, and Leah Remini was brought on as a new series regular. The move was a disaster. Fans were outraged. They felt it was disrespectful to the actress and the character to just write her off so coldly. The show's tone shifted to be more like a King of Queens reboot, but viewers rejected it. The ratings crashed, and the show was canceled after that season. It became a textbook example of how a clumsy, heartless recasting can alienate an entire audience. Killing off a wife to bring in a new co-star is brutal, but our next show did the exact same thing, making the same mistake twice. 13. Kevin James on Kevin Can Wait. This one is so bad it deserves a second look, but this time focusing on the star himself. Kevin James was the face of the show, and the decision to remove his on-screen wife, Donna, was made to re-team him with Leah Remini. While the network may have made the final call, the move was widely seen as being driven by a desire to recreate the dynamic James had with Remini. The public backlash was immense. Fans felt that Kevin James, as the star and executive producer, should have protected his co-star, Erin Hayes. Instead, her character was unceremoniously disposed of between seasons with very little explanation. In interviews, the cast and crew seemed to make light of the situation, suggesting they ran out of ideas for a married couple, which only made fans angrier. The whole affair made the star, Kevin James, look bad. It seemed like a cold, calculated business decision that ignored the loyalty of the show's viewers. The move completely backfired. It didn't just ruin the show, it damaged the likable everyman brand that Kevin James had built over his entire career. The show's cancellation was a direct result of this massive miscalculation. It's rare for a star to be at the center of such a huge casting controversy. But our next story is perhaps the most famous and contentious sitcom recasting of all time. 14. Janet Hubert on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
You are not going to MacArthur Park tonight. In fact, none of you are going to MacArthur Park tonight.
Wait a minute.
Boy, do not test me.
Yes, ma'am.
For the first 3 seasons of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the character of Aunt Vivian was played by Janet Hubert. She was incredible. She portrayed Aunt Viv as a strong, sophisticated, and fiery university professor who wouldn't take nonsense from anyone, not even her husband Philip. Her iconic dance scene is one of the most memorable moments in the show's history, but behind the scenes, things were not so rosy. There were reports of major friction between Janet Hubert and the show's megastar Will Smith. Their personalities clashed, and the set became a difficult place to work. By the end of Season 3, Hubert was let go from the show. When Season 4 began, actress Daphne Maxwell Reid was in the role. The new Aunt Viv was a much softer, quieter, and more traditional homemaker. The change was jarring. The show even made a joke about it, but fans never fully embraced the new Aunt Viv. For decades, a public feud raged between Will Smith and Janet Hubert, with both telling their sides of the story. The recasting left a huge mark on the show, and to this day, fans are divided between the original Aunt Viv and the replacement. A contentious recasting can divide fans forever. But what if the show doesn't just recast a character once, but keeps switching back and forth between two different actors? 15. Lisa Goranson on Roseanne. The story of the two Beckys on Roseanne is one of the strangest in sitcom history. For the first 5 seasons, the oldest daughter, Becky Connor, was played by Lisa Goranson. She was perfect as the smart but sometimes headstrong teenager, but Lisa Goranson wanted to go to college, so she decided to leave the show. At first, her character was written off as having eloped with her boyfriend, Mark. But the producers wanted Becky back, so they recast the role with a new actress, Sarah Chalke, for season 6. Sarah played the part for 2 seasons, bringing a different, slightly lighter energy to the character. But then it got weird. Lisa Goranson's school schedule allowed her to come back to the show part-time. So, for season 8, the show just alternated between the two actresses. One week, Becky would be played by Lisa. The next week, she'd be played by Sarah. They never explained it. It was a bizarre meta-joke that confused viewers and shattered any sense of continuity. It broke the illusion of the show and constantly reminded the audience that they were watching actors, not a real family. The constant switching was a gimmick that, for many, was a sign the show was running out of steam. Swapping actors is confusing, but sometimes an actor's personal life can create problems that have nothing to do with contracts or college. 16. Lisa Bonet on The Cosby Show and A Different World.
It's about courtesy. Now I have to go to the bursar tomorrow.
Stevie, I'm sorry. I promise it'll never happen again.
Seems I've heard that before.
Well, one of these days it's going to be true.
Lisa Bonet shot to fame playing the cool, free-spirited Denise Huxtable on the #1 show in America, The Cosby Show. She was so popular that she was given her own spin-off series, A Different World, which followed Denise to college. The show was an instant hit. But during the first season of A Different World, Lisa Bonet's real life took a new turn. She and her then-husband, Lenny Kravitz, announced that they were expecting a baby. This presented a creative problem for the producers. They reportedly felt that a storyline about an unmarried college student having a baby was not the right fit for the show's tone. So, after just 1 season, as the star of her own spin-off, Lisa Bonet was let go. She returned to The Cosby Show, but the friction remained. Her character was eventually written off that show as well. The situation created a lot of behind-the-scenes tension and abruptly changed the course of A Different World, which had to be retooled around other characters. While that show eventually found its footing and became a classic, the original star's exit was a rocky and controversial moment. An actor's personal life creating friction is one thing, but what about when their personal issues lead to them being fired multiple times from the same show? 17. Mackenzie Phillips on One Day at a Time.
You seriously think I'm worried about sex? Now, why would you think that? Well, it's gotta be. It always is with old people.
One Day at a Time was a groundbreaking sitcom in the 70s and 80s. It centered on a divorced mother, Ann Romano, raising her 2 teenage daughters, Julie and Barbara. Mackenzie Phillips, who played the rebellious older daughter Julie, became a huge star. But behind her success, Phillips was battling severe and public struggles with substance abuse. Her behavior became increasingly unreliable, and it started to affect her work on the show. In 1980, the producers made the difficult decision to fire her. Her character was written out of the show. After getting help, she was invited back a couple of years later, but unfortunately, her struggles returned. After she collapsed on set, she was fired for a second and final time. The absence of her character left a huge hole in the show's family dynamic. The series was built around a mother and her 2 daughters. And losing one of them permanently altered the chemistry that had made the show a hit. It was a sad story of real-life problems tragically impacting a beloved television family. Sometimes an actor's actions leave a hole in the show. But what happens when an actor's awful off-screen conduct comes to light years later, making it impossible to even watch the show again. 18. Louis C.K. on Louis.
I've never gained from my looks at all. I'm the guy that women see and they go, eh? And I'm like, I know, but let me just talk to you for a minute.
For several years, the show Louis was one of the most critically acclaimed comedies on television. Created by and starring comedian Louis C.K., the show was praised for its surreal humor, its cinematic style, and its brutally honest look at life. It was considered a groundbreaking and influential series that pushed the boundaries of the sitcom format. Then, in 2017, a devastating report was published detailing a long history of serious misconduct by Louis C.K. towards several women in the comedy industry. The fallout was swift and total. The network immediately cut all ties with him and canceled the show. The distributor pulled the show from all platforms, and his career came to a sudden and complete halt. The revelations retroactively ruined the show for almost everyone. Knowing the truth about his off-screen behavior made it impossible to watch his on-screen persona, which was often a fictionalized version of himself, in the same way. The show's themes and jokes suddenly felt creepy and tainted. A series that was once celebrated as a work of genius became toxic, its legacy forever destroyed by the inexcusable actions of its creator and star. A show being tainted by its star is one thing, but our next show saw its main character change so much for the worse that he became unrecognizable to the fans who once loved him. 19. Ed Helms on The Office.
I graduated from anger management the same way I graduated from Cornell, on time. So look out, Dunder Mifflin! I mean, look out in a fun way, not like I'm gonna hurt you.
For most of its run on The Office, Andy Bernard, played by Ed Helms, was a fan favorite. He started as an annoying rival to Dwight, but evolved into a lovable, insecure, and well-meaning goofball. His courtship of Erin was one of the show's sweetest storylines. By the time Michael Scott left, the writers had positioned Andy to become the new manager of Dunder Mifflin. But in the show's 9th and final season, the writers made a series of bizarre and deeply unpopular decisions with his character. Andy abruptly leaves his girlfriend Erin and his job to go on a 3-month-long sailing trip with his brother. When he comes back, he is a completely different person. He's selfish, arrogant, cruel to his coworkers, and downright insufferable. He abandons his dream job to chase a fantasy of becoming a star, and he treats Erin horribly. Fans were mystified and angry. Why had the writers taken a character they had spent years developing and turned him into a complete jerk? The decision soured the entire final season for many viewers and left a bad taste in their mouths as the beloved series came to an end. A beloved character turning into a villain is a terrible way to end a show. But our final entry is about a sitcom that made a fundamental mistake in its very premise, a mistake that deflated the show's central tension before it could even get started. 20. Ann B. Davis on The Bob Cummings Show. Let's go way back to the 1950s for this one. The Bob Cummings Show, also known as Love That Bob, was a popular sitcom starring Bob Cummings as Bob Collins, a dashingly handsome Hollywood photographer who was a major ladies' man. A huge part of the show's comedy came from his wisecracking and lovelorn assistant, Schultze, played by the amazing Ann B. Davis, who would later become famous as Alice on The Brady Bunch. The whole dynamic of the show was that Schultze was hopelessly in love with her boss, Bob, but he was always chasing after glamorous models and actresses, barely noticing her affections. This unrequited love was the source of countless jokes and was a core part of the show's appeal. Schultze was the relatable character everyone rooted for. Then, in the show's 5th season, the writers made a fatal error. They gave Schultze a boyfriend. Not just any boyfriend, but a recurring one she seemed serious about. This simple decision completely deflated the show's central comedic tension. If Schultze had a boyfriend, she was no longer pining for Bob. Her main motivation, her entire reason for being in many scenes, was gone. The show lost its spark, and the ratings began to decline. It was canceled at the end of that season, proving that sometimes one small character change can undo the very thing that made a show work in the first place.